Have you ever been betrayed so badly it disrupted your whole path? That's exactly what happened to Sony in the early 90s. They had joined forces with Nintendo, yes, that Nintendo, to create a revolutionary console that would use CDs instead of cartridges. It was supposed to change the future of gaming forever. But then Nintendo stabbed them in the back, not in private, not behind closed doors. They did it live, on stage, in front of the entire world. What happened next? No one could have seen it coming. This is the unbelievable story of how Nintendo's backstab led to the rise of a gaming empire, PlayStation. Think you know gaming history? Think again. Like this video if you're already shocked and hit subscribe. What comes next will change the way you see Sony and Nintendo forever. Now, let's rewind to the early 90s. Back then, the gaming world was on the verge of something huge. Nintendo was the top dog in home consoles, and they wanted to take things to the next level. So, they teamed up with Sony. Yep, the one more famous for Walkmans and TVs than video games at the time. Together, they started working on a powerful CD-ROM add-on for the SNES, something that could blow past the limits of old-school game cartridges. They called it the Super Nintendo PlayStation. It was to become a mashup of Nintendo's gaming know-how and Sony's tech muscle. But somehow, behind closed doors, things got messy. Nintendo started getting cold feet. They didn't like how much control Sony was gaining over the project, especially when it came to licensing. So without saying a word to their partner, Nintendo secretly cut a deal with Philips, Sony's rival. Actually, then, before Nintendo's surprise deal with Philips, both Sony and Philips were already major players in the tech world, but let's say in very different ways. Philips was well established in Europe and had made a name for itself in home electronics like TVs, radios, and audio systems. Philips later tried to enter the gaming space with the CDI, an interactive multimedia console that used CDs instead of cartridges. But the CDI didn't do well. It had clunky controls, weak third-party support, and forgettable names, which made it a commercial failure. Sony, on the other hand, was quickly becoming a global tech powerhouse. While they had partnered with Philips to co-develop the CD format, their real strength lay in groundbreaking products like the Walkman, high-end televisions, and premium audio systems. Though they hadn't yet stepped into the gaming world, Sony at that point saw Nintendo as the gateway to that opportunity. But then came the bombshell. At what was expected to be a joint announcement with Sony, Nintendo stunned the entire industry by revealing a surprise partnership with Philips instead. This happened at the 1991 Consumer Electronics Show. No mention of Sony. No acknowledgement of the months of joint development. Just a clean break, as if the collaboration had never existed. Sony executives were sitting in the audience when the announcement dropped. The project they had worked on for months was effectively dead, and they were the last to know. What should have been a milestone in a historic partnership turned into a moment of public embarrassment. Sony, along with the rest of the tech world, was completely blindsided. In an instant, the highly anticipated collaboration fell apart. Sony wasted time, talent, and resources in the partnership. Sony's president at the time, Norio Oga, was furious, but was encouraged by Ken Kutaragi, the engineer who had championed Sony's move into gaming. Oga decided not to back down. Instead, Sony created a brand new division called Sony Computer Entertainment, with Kutaragi in charge. Their mission? To build a console that would take gaming into the future. That console became the Sony PlayStation, combining two major breakthroughs of the 1990s, CD-based storage and cutting-edge 3D graphics. At first, the idea of combining CDs and 3D visuals seemed bold, even risky. In 1993, most developers weren't sold on 3D yet. Huge games like Doom hadn't even been released, and even when it did, its monsters were still made with 2D images. 3D graphics cards for PCs were still years away, and even in arcades, the cutting edge of gaming at the time, developers were only just beginning to explore true 3D visuals. By 1994, Sony was done playing backup after years of quiet development and a bold reinvention of its original design. They officially launched the PlayStation in Japan. It was sleek, it was affordable, and most importantly, it ran on CDs. While Nintendo clung to bulky cartridges, Sony bet on the future, and that gamble gave them a massive edge in storage, sound, and cinematic gameplay the world hadn't seen before. In 1995, the PlayStation launched in North America and Europe, backed by an aggressive marketing campaign that targeted an older, more style-conscious audience. Sony wasn't just selling a console, it was selling an identity. With 3D graphics that rivaled arcade machines and support for cutting-edge titles like Ridge Racer, Tekken, and Wipeout, the PlayStation quickly captured the attention of gamers and developers alike. Third-party studios flocked to the platform. CDs were cheaper to produce, easier to distribute, and could hold vastly more data than cartridges. That meant more detailed graphics, full-motion video, voice acting, and expansive soundtracks, all of which became trademarks of the PlayStation era. By the end of the decade, Sony had sold tens of millions of units worldwide, transforming itself from an outsider into a dominant force in gaming. While Sony charged ahead with the PlayStation, Nintendo made a bold but ultimately costly choice. For their next console, the Nintendo 64, they stuck with cartridges. Sure, they offered faster load times and tighter control over piracy, but the trade-offs were brutal. Cartridges were expensive to make, slow to mass produce, and severely limited in storage. In an era where games were becoming more cinematic and content-heavy, that was a deal-breaker. Third-party developers were frustrated. CDs gave them freedom, more space, lower costs, faster production. And Sony, they welcomed those developers with open arms. Major publishers like Square, now Square Enix, took notice. The legendary RPG Final Fantasy VII, originally developed for Nintendo, became a PlayStation exclusive, after it became clear that the scope of the game couldn't fit on a cartridge. This wasn't an isolated case, it was the beginning of a larger shift. While the N64 performed well and had several iconic games, including Super Mario 64, GoldenEye 007, and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, its library was significantly smaller and its third-party support far weaker than Sony's. But for the PlayStation, it offered quantity, variety, and technical ambition, appealing to both casual gamers and a maturing audience looking for more complex experiences. By the end of the fifth console generation, Sony had sold over 100 million PlayStations worldwide. Nintendo's N64, on the other hand, managed around 32 million. The numbers reflected more than just sales, they marked a shift in power and influence. The gaming industry was no longer Nintendo's domain alone. From that point forward, it was a battleground, and Sony claimed the high ground. But think of it this way, what if Sony had not taken that betrayal personally? What if they had simply taken the defeat, backed off, and stayed in their comfort zone making TVs and audio equipment? The gaming world we know today might look completely different. There would be no epic PlayStation versus Xbox rivalry, no God of War, no Uncharted, no Spider-Man games setting new standards. In a nutshell, Sony's entry into gaming didn't just give us a new console, it sparked a whole new era. They brought cinematic storytelling, great graphics, and a whole new level of competition that pushed the industry forward. So yeah, it all started with a broken partnership. But sometimes, getting shut out is exactly what it takes to kick the door open. We want to hear from you. Was Nintendo's move a mistake, or just a normal spark that the industry needed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk betrayal, business, and the bold moves that shape the games we love. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and check out the next video on your screen. You won't want to miss more of Sony's heroics.